And Norm here, along with
Joey.
And well, this is our first tested team video together. So if you watched my favorite things video this past year, one of the things I talked about really loving and incorporating into my workshop was a proper desk lamp, right, for filming miniatures.
Yeah, these are rad. I didn't really know these existed until your video. These are cool.
Well, previously, Adam in his shop, he has his cheap LED lights with the gooseneck, and those are great. He loves how easily he can move those. For me, I've always been looking for a light that I could use for photography or painting that I could basically manipulate to any angle, like without using a magic arm.
Yeah, and the height and the adjustment angles on these are really great.
Yeah, so this is the one that I ended up liking the most from Redgrass. It's their R9. They ran this Kickstarter for it many years ago. One of the reasons I love it is that like all the hinges are really rigid, so they don't bounce around, and it goes really high up, like 30 inches tall. The light itself has these two panels that I can actually bend in and out. So the idea is that you're flooding whatever your subject is with light from both sides so you get no shadows whatsoever.
It seems important if you're painting miniatures to be able to take away the bias of hard lights or shadows.
And also, you can see that you can also look through this hole here. So if you get it real low, which there you go, you can actually set it right down and then like look through as you're painting, almost like, as if it was a ring light, but it doesn't have that ring light quality.
Right.
This is not a cheap tool. So this is about like $240. It comes from Europe and like super well designed, super sturdy. And in following some of the miniatures forums, people like this light a lot, but they also were looking for more cost affordable alternatives. So I found this one. This is actually like the generic, China model of a desk lamp you can find on Amazon for $50.
Okay.
And there is a miniatures company that sells a version of this, I think for like $85 that people really like. And I just found I was looking at the power indicators. And sometimes when you look at the way these markings are, you're like, that's a generic light.
Right.
You can tell they just maybe slapped the logo on it. So I went on Amazon and found this exact same model. And I like the design. It has like hinges where you can, as opposed to going light from this side, you can bend around a thing. Right, so you can kind of bend down.
And it does have good rigidity. I'm curious, is it overuse over time, if it'll start to...
The one thing I don't like is I want this, I'm touching these capacitive light buttons right now, but like I want to bend in more angles than it actually can. Like I'm so used to the Adam gooseneck method. It's like I don't want to break it. But it is nice, and that one way I actually use it is I turn it this way. There's a way I can even rotate it where I almost make it like a curved light, like a side light as well. Maybe it's just bending it up like that. There it goes, like bending up like that. And so I can have it as like a side light for filming or something like that. Anyway, this is $50. This is over 200. And I wanted to chat with you and see what the quality of light difference could be.
Right, yes, because there's a term in film and photography lights called CRI. Yep. We talked a little bit about this. It's basically what it stands for is like the color rendering index. There's a lot that goes into that, but it's a measure of how colors are rendered from that light. Like there's the full color spectrum. Some lights will be, they'll represent blues and reds better than yellows and reds. And so the color rendering index, the CRI, is used as a way to like just give us a standard in terms of this light will represent colors evenly, like compared to the sun being a score of 100.
So it's typically, I've seen that number associated with production lights.
Yes.
Like, lights that we have lighting the studio or Adam's studio, when you buy something in that production category, they'll say like rated 95 plus CRI.
And if you go to Home Depot, you can probably find it on some lights. They do actually, if it's good, like 95 plus, they'll print it. I think 85, I think 90 and up is probably this light will be good for production. No one's looking for a 100. Even the sun going through atmospheric haze and stuff will give it down to like 98, depending on the day and like where you're at.
But it's like a simple one number solution.
It is, yeah, but there's a lot more to it. And there are some people who don't like the CRI. They don't think it's comprehensive enough, because what it's doing is it's taking, all right, so we'll break into what CRI actually is. It's what that number is coming from an average that they are calling the RA, like R being the representation of a certain color, and then 1 through, what is it? 1 through 15, right? Is what all these, if you look on the spectrometer here, I have the Sekonic C800 spectrometer, you'll see 1 through 18.
As different things are measuring. They're measuring 18 different values.
18 different colors.
Okay. Oh, 18 different colors.
15 different colors
15,
rather.
wow.
And it's just like here's sort of like a yellow, here's a blue in this world. And each of those basically has its own number from 0 to 100. And so what the CRI is doing is it's measuring the first 8. So the RA, the R average, is just the first 8. And that's where some of the
what are the 8 colors?
The 8, it's like a white, there's like a peach, and then you can go online and there's actually like names, they give these all names. There's like teal. But then you see like it's going from like white to yellow, then it's going like those like 3 blues, a couple purples, and it ends there. It ends before it gets to red.
Well, before like the hard red, hard blue, hard green.
Yes.
It's just like this kind of white to blue hue.
Right. So what you're seeing here, the RA, from the last measure I did was RA 96.2. The average from R1 to R8 is 96.2.
And that's the CRI number that you see.
And that's the CRI number that you see in North America. In Europe, there's also called the CRI-E. You'll see the CRI-E, it's extended. It's using all 15. And then there's another version of this that they're going down. So it becomes like it can easily become a dark path of just really hard like calculations of different colors. But let's just stick with the 15 in CRI.
Yeah. And it's just an average too.
It's just an average of
one bad reading for blue could throw you off.
Yes.
And decrease your average. So like I can see why people get really particular.
Yeah, and also like why this tool in particular is important, because you do need, for production, you do need to see like, wait, this blue is not, even though these CRIs are all 96, for some reason this light isn't doing blue. Like, why is that? And you can sort of see, and this tool will allow you to like tell you what kind of gels you might need. But what also happens with this CRI 1 through 8 is that manufacturers of lights and makers of lights know how to kind of game this system now. So they can not care about these rest of these colors.
They can design a light to just be really good at the white and the light blue and not good at red at all.
And tell, hey, we got a CRI of 98, but half their colors might be bad. And so
oh my God.
It's like since testing this, I've actually found lights that I'm like, oh, I can totally see it. Like right when it hits R9, the drop off of quality becomes significant. Like on these LED strip lights that we have in here, I was kind of walking around doing it, and it was, I mean, I had some in like negative numbers, like -3. Like, I don't even know how that happens, but
it's way deeper than I thought.
Yeah, and
I love it.
It's hard to really grasp like what this even means to us practically. I think there's a good version of this where it's like there are some people who have taken like a blue card and a black card and then walked into a closet with a bad CRI and both things look black. So it's like that level of like, oh, this light is not rendering this blue and it's just looking black to me.
When you're filming it.
Well, for them, it's just like naked eye. Yeah, okay. Like if you hang out at like a gas station, we're talking about sodium vapor lights at gas stations. I actually saw a bunch of this when I was in Cuba doing film and photography. The city is built by all these old sodium vapor lights, and like taking photos and just looking, you can see that like these really hard yellows were coming out of things that are supposed to be more maroon. And
well, you're also saying that if someone wants to mimic the quality of like a really poor light, they could also add gels in to match. A poor CRI rating.
Yeah,
or
you can imagine
poor,
like,
RA rating, RA12 rating, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and fluorescent lights, like shop fluorescent lights, like what Adam has, like they sort of have a bit of this. Like it's you get really good 1 through 5 or 6 or 7, and then it drops off, and like that's where you get those sort of off colors when you look at like, hospital lights or David Fincher movies, for example.
And this is a very specialized tool, because when I think of like light metering, you see the classic, someone walks in front of a camera with a little thing with a bulb, and they're getting a color temperature and a tint. This is not just your Kelvin and your green magenta tint.
Yeah, no, yeah, the two main tools are like the exposure tools where you're getting like the lux, or you're trying to figure out the ratio, like what do I need to stop down at? And then there's also the color, where like what color is this light giving off in terms of Kelvin. This is sort of an all-in-one. This has your exposure index, this has your color, and then again, all that spectrometer, like really fine detail of all those little things, and then tools for like memory, so you can compare lights. So this one in particular is very expensive, like $2,000 that we talked about. Yeah. But it's from what it can do, it's not for everybody, but it works really well in the production world.
I remember it's a spectrometer. Spectrometer, right? And we used to have these spectrometers for computer monitors, like the spider, where you like basically put that sensor right up to different parts of a computer monitor, and I guess you run the software, and then it flashes through a cycle of colors,
Yeah.
and it gets you something like this reading. But a computer monitor, the amount of brightness, not nearly as much as what you're getting from these lights.
Yeah, and
Does
even
that
those.
matter?
Was that?
Does that matter, the brightness?
Well, for this tool, I've seen it just take a little bit longer. Like it takes a while to like read it, but I don't think it really changes from the tool reading. But lights, we were talking about earlier, that lights do actually change quality as you dim or as you change like bicolor. So we have a lot of bicolor lights that go from Kelvin to daylight.
Yeah.
And some of those are rated better on some ends and less than others. And then again, like dimming, all these LED lights like change quality as you dim and actually become worse, especially in certain, or they may accentuate like one aspect that's not great in that light. So it's very complicated stuff.
Well, I would love to do some kind of real testing for my curiosity and maybe some usefulness for your use of this tool. We have more than these lights on, obviously. Do you want to maybe start with one of these lights and we'll turn off the other lights?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn on the Redgrass R9. We have a light here and a light overhead. Why don't we turn those off real quick?
That one.
All right, the light behind us won't really matter. I'm going to plug in this light real quickly. Here it goes. Okay,
All right.
so this is the Redgrass R9, and brighter might be better. Or maybe you said it could have different qualities if it was bright or dim. So let's start with the brightest.
Yeah, let's try bright and then go down.
Okay, so this is daylight only, not bicolor. The LEDs, I assume they've chosen, are calibrated for daylight.
Yeah. Okay. And what's interesting too is I've seen a lot of daylight lights, and I can see some slight differences in this one just by the eye.
Just by your eye.
Just by yeah.
Well, okay, wait. What are you guessing?
Well, I'm gonna say that I don't know enough about the R measure to what it changed. I definitely see a little bit of a green tint, which happens with LEDs
I can see
over
that
time.
As well. Yeah, I would say a little bit of a green.
Yeah, and I'm curious as what that means here. So I guess we'll learn that together.
Okay. All right.
So I'm gonna make sure the bulb's out. Hit the measure button. Please check. Oh, bulb is not out. Bulb is now out. There we go. That's pretty much it. It's just a one button thing.
All right, let's take a look at our.
That's pretty good.
Okay. I intentionally did not remember what the CRI rating of this was. So it's reading as your RA, your average of your first 8 R numbers of a 98.5 CRI.
Which is considered good.
That's great. That's well higher than 95. As we go down the color spectrum, its weakest is green.
Green and blue have like a 94, a mid 94. But then also if you jump back up, you can see what's bringing it down to 98 is some of the blues. So it's like it's doing the white to the gold pretty well, and like the purples.
Well, for someone painting miniatures, it's really good to know that it's representation. It's when you have something blue here, it may not be as accurate under the sun.
Right, yeah.
But it's still, like at the worst, it's 94.5, which is still great.
Yeah, like from what I can guess, like this all seems very trustworthy in terms of like what I'm painting will look the same when I bring it outside or bring it to a set.
Who watches the watchers though? Who calibrates the calibration tool? It's trustworthy as a measurement according to the tool, the color meter. Okay, let's dim this all the way down, maybe.
Okay, so let me just do a quick.
Can you save it?
I can save it.
Oh, wonderful.
Saved as Untitled 4. All right.
Great. We'll get some. I will share that with everyone out there. Okay, this is the dimmest now.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay. So it dropped down a little bit.
Ooh. Any guesses out there? 95.6 at its dimmest.
Which is still good, but you can see exactly like the blue and the yellow.
Yeah.
Or drop down even more. It's like 89.1.
Wow.
And so, which is not on the CRI scale. So RA of 95, that 89 isn't part of that average.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So I'm curious if that's like a common thing with LED lights.
Yeah.
Like that's where they sort of break down is the blues and yellows.
Well, we're about to find out with this light. Okay, so let me turn off the Redgrass. We're gonna turn on this generic light and has 2 banks. So this is gonna be the brightest, and I'm gonna maximize our brightness. So again, we'll There it goes.
All right.
This is the brightest setting under daylight with the $50 light alternative.
Ooh. Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna guess 93 as a CRI for its max brightness.
Oh, this is wild. It's 91.5.
Wow.
So it's a good 7 points, but also that blue and the red, the primary like R9 and R12,
Yeah.
which again is not part of the CRI, is 67.8 in the blue and 61 in the red. I don't even know how to
Yeah.
test it.
So, I mean, to illustrate that, like obviously we're not shooting this video in 422 or log or anything.
Right.
But if I was to take a photo, like a raw photo of a red object, are you saying that compared to taking that photo in like under the sun would look slightly different?
That's what is implied. Absolutely.
Yeah. If I, of course, have the same color temperature and everything matched up in post.
Yeah, and this R9 is that's like a pure like red.
Yeah.
Like what you would imagine as red. So that's really curious because, yeah, that'd be an interesting test. Like having red cards or something that's very red to test into that.
All right, let's decrease the brightness all the way down. This is the lowest brightness for daylight using the cheaper light. Takes a little longer.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go not too much of a decrease. I'm gonna say like 90 CRI.
It actually, I think, bumped up a little bit. It went to 91.8. All I really saw happen was like the red and the blue just sort of knock up a little bit. And I think some of these other blues, I think
the RA stayed almost the same. A little higher. So there's consistency.
Right.
Great.
Which is good.
Maybe it's that, and let me turn on this light so we can, maybe it's that the difference or how difficult it is to get that 90, like 90, 94, for example, is not that difficult.
Yeah.
But once you get above a certain point, the delta to get 95, 96, 97, 98 is more sensitive.
Yeah.
So that's why it was, it jumped from 98 to 95 in brightness, but here, staying at 91, not so hard for it to stay at 91.
Right, yeah, that's a good point, yeah. I totally think that could be it.
Yeah. I mean, out there, again, we're shooting this just as a compressed video, not log. We have both these lights. You're kind of lit with this one. I'm lit with this one. They don't look bad. Like
No,
if you're filming, a video for YouTube using either of these lights, and like just visually, like I'd be happy to paint underneath either of these lights. It's just, the ratings they're clearly different quality.
They're clearly different quality, and I think that's probably important to know for productions using a lot of lights, and more specifically, a lot of the same lights. Like they don't want different sources casting different, slightly different renditions of color throughout things. And this like method of using the same lights that they use on film sets for doing makeup and stuff, you'll see a lot of times like makeup trailers, they'll grab a Kino or whatever sky panel they're using on set in the makeup room because they know that makeup's going to be shown on that light. So there, it's less about like
the fluorescent lights of a trailer is not going to be as good. So, okay, that makes total sense. Yeah.
But for this purpose, like if you're just having one of these lights in your shop, you're probably pretty good with like even the 91.8. Like I'm really curious about that red. Like I don't even know how to further test that, but like
you're shook by the low 80s, the mid 80s quality of the red and blue.
And it really does like that gaming of the lights. Like I'm really curious if the manufacturers are sitting there and they're like, that's all we care about
is that first eight.
Is those first eight, and then just like, and what does that even mean from a production standpoint of making these things in terms of how do you skimp that on that?
All right. Well, this has given me a lot to think about, and it's a little more info than just looking at the forums because people like both of these lights. And yes, to my eye, they're both nice lights and practically and functionally they're good. But you're getting a little bit what you pay for.
Yeah.
Very cool. I imagine you're just walking around just shoving this into bulbs.
I'm checking this everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll try to share this information for you out there. But thanks, Joey. It's answered a lot of questions for me.
Yeah, that was fun.
Hope you guys had fun too. We'll see you next time.
Hey Norm, so I ran through a bunch of color tests throughout the household. I have a bunch of incandescent bulbs, I have LED household lights, I got a couple film lights, and then I did a daylight test. So what I did was I went through and I did a color test, a color temperature test to see what color balance I should set the camera at to make sure that was accurate. And then I did a CRI test to see what the CRI value was given to me. And then I took a color chart. This is a pretty basic color chart. It's not going to be super comprehensive, but it's got like your main colors when you do color charts for color grading. So I kind of wanted to see what these looked like on camera versus good lights versus bad CRI lights. The results I found were pretty interesting. Like the incandescent bulbs, like the household bulbs that were once used in households for many, many years. Now they've been more replaced with the LED lights. But those incandescent bulbs almost like produce a 100% CRI across the entire spectrum of RA. Like it almost had like the daylight quality of CRI, which is fascinating because I've always heard stories about cinematographers sort of stockpiling all those incandescent bulbs as they were getting phased out. It makes sense. I mean, like, it produces a perfect color accuracy in terms of skin tones when you match that to the color balance. A lot of the LED lights are missing that big red line, the R9, which is like your heavy red, which I think is when you hear people talk about LED lights not quite giving skin tones the vibrancy that they need. I think that's what they're missing. They're missing that tungsten versus LED, that changeover. It's like, even though the CRIs produce really good results on both, that R9 that's not measured in the CRI is missing in a lot of LED bulbs. And so that's why I think people subconsciously view tungsten or incandescent bulbs as being much richer for the skin tones. So that was really, really fascinating. Being that we have a bunch of those in the house, I know that my family prefers certain lights over others. In the kitchen, we have one big LED light that sort of illuminates the entire kitchen, and then we have another one on the side that pretty much illuminates the entire kitchen as well. But I've always noticed that my wife chooses one over the other. And doing the test readings there, I noticed that the main one has like a much lower CRI value than the other one, the incandescent one that she uses. They almost look the same. The color balance is like almost the exact same, but she just subconsciously goes for that because I think it just looks a little more natural to her, which is fascinating. We also have the same situation in our bathroom. We have two lights. One is much brighter. The other is a little bit dimmer, but the dimmer one has is incandescent, so it has almost a perfect CRI, where the other one's much smaller. So I would advise anybody using that bathroom to do their makeup using a certain light over the others. We have like a high quality LED light bulb in our living room that produced a pretty standard, what we've seen is a pretty standard CRI, which is like a 92 throughout the R1, R8, and then R9, it drops down and things start dropping down significantly. So I did a series of these tests across the house, and then I went outside again and I did bounce tests. I was thinking, what if I do a lot of diffusion or bouncing light off of a whiteboard. So my thought was, what if the quality changes through that process? And I didn't find much of a change. Everything I bounced, I even did some diffusion tests. I didn't film that, but I diffused lights through some grid cloth. I bounced it. Those CRIs pretty much stayed consistent throughout that entire process. Looking at the boards through the different shots, it's hard to like really pinpoint, okay, this green looks different than that green and that blue looks different than that blue. I can see like subtle differences if I really stared at it and like if I really like was to dissect each of those colors, you can find those differences. But I think what was more interesting is just looking at this chart as just a general, like just looking at it and letting it kind of wash over you. The lower CRI values I found almost had like a 1990s 3D poster effect, where like some colors would pop more and others would sort of fade back. And so like just as I'm just looking at it, it almost has like a sort of strange three-dimensional look on some of the colors and not so much on the others, which I anticipate would cause like eye strain over time. Whereas like the perfect CRI light situations with the boards, everything looked vibrant, everything looked as if it was just this flat tome of colors that was presented to me. So that was all the tests that I did at home. Really fascinating. I'd love to use this thing more in the production environment to see what results it can give us.
Thank you guys so much for watching that video. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you we have some excellent merch. We have a 5-pack of demerit badges for sale right now at tested/store.com. We've got the I hung it off of level demerit badge, the I built the chair backwards demerit badge, the I hit my thumb with a hammer demerit badge. We've got the stapler in my finger demerit badge, and my favorite, I stuck the duct tape to itself demerit badge. Get yours now, tested/store.store. Tested-store. Tested. It's right here. There. Just click there.